Sexual fantasy.
Fantasy.
Sexual fantasies. We wanted to have a bit of a chat about fantasy and the weird and wonderful interests that people have, as well as the more common and gentle fantasies. Everybody has fantasies.
So what are your fantasies?
Mine are little bit. Well, I mean, mine are probably really fucked up to most people.
But it's okay to have fucked up fantasies as long
Yes.
as you don't act upon it in real life.
Yes, we
Most
were.
of the time.
We wanted to say that a fantasy is very much something that's in your own head, and everybody can have their own fantasy, and it could literally be anything from the way somebody thinks that they feel to the way that somebody wants somebody to look. The brain is an incredible thing.
Yeah. I'm sure we all have fantasies in our heads that we're kind of ashamed of.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people feel really guilty for the fantasies that they have as well, which we want to try and change, because a fantasy isn't real life, it's just a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's just what's in somebody's head. So, I mean, I'm a firm believer that any fantasy goes. I mean, including the really, really messed up ones, the ones that really push the boundaries, even the ones that are illegal. I believe that they're okay because they're just fantasies. We're talking about really, really dark stuff like bestiality, children, non-consensual rape stuff. I mean, that they're huge. They're very common fantasies that a lot of people have. But nobody talks about them.
Yeah, and it's strange to think, well, maybe we have these fantasies because they're so wrong and because they're taboo subjects that we're attracted to things that are wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because being wrong's naughty and kind of sexy sometimes.
Kind of sexy, definitely. But yeah, I think you agree as well. It's just what's in somebody's head. As soon as it turns into something bad is when the fantasy becomes reality. So say, for example, you're a girl out there who has a massive desire to be raped, and that's a horrible horrible reality.
Yeah.
But the fantasy is just completely different. And I think that's absolutely okay. And I think it's okay for guys out there to feel that they want to do something nasty to somebody, as long as they don't do it in real life. Unless it's with somebody that's
consenting.
Consenting. It's all about consent.
I had fantasies from quite a young age as well.
Yeah, I mean, they do start from a really young age, and especially when you're, even before you really know sexually.
What it is about.
Yeah. It's a weird one.
When I was in junior school, actually, I sort of had weird fantasies.
A lot of fantasy that most people experience is the stuff that, it's like it's
totally weird. And
it's in your own brain. Like you could be enjoying something so specific about that fantasy that you just won't get in real life.
Yeah, it's but then there's nothing about that I'd want to do in real life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very fine line.
Yeah.
What is right and wrong, and I do definitely think, anything goes as long as it's consented with both parties. I mean, obviously minors and animals are out of the question.
Yeah.
But, I mean, one of the first fantasies that I had was a lot of...
It's like,
it is really hard. Like, can I say that? Yeah, I mean, I know from a young age I was really into the whole sub thing, because like thinking about playing as a kid and being like, oh no, don't kidnap me, and oh, I want to be Mary Jane, oh no, Spider-Man's tied me up, kind of stuff. And you think it's all innocent, but it isn't.
I did like to get bound as well.
Yeah, but I think that's just us. It's not necessarily everybody out there.
Not necessarily everyone. We might be just like we have both been quite sexual from a young age. Yeah. Which not everyone is.
And also we're so sexually open is that we're completely okay with exploring everything that we might be interested in, and that could be why that we're the way that we are, because we're sort of, we want to try new things, and we've done that sooner, so now we know exactly what we want.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, fantasy-wise, I have had a lot of fucked up fantasies. Most of my fantasies now are really, really fucked up. The stuff that you shouldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But it's just a fantasy, I find. And I'd love to, I mean, for me personally, I'd love to make that into a reality, but only if somebody else would want to do that.
Yeah, like role play kind of.
Yeah, like role play's a good
That's a good way how you can like act on your fantasies, by role play with your consenting partner.
And a fantasy can also range from you fantasizing about a boy that you like, or a girl that you like, or anyone.
Yeah.
You could be sitting in school just thinking about them in a sexy way, and it could just be something simple like them kissing you, and that's absolutely fine to think about.
Yeah, I think a lot of women fantasize about having sex with other women.
Yeah.
But wouldn't necessarily do it.
Yeah, exactly. A fantasy is just so different to reality.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you're gay either.
No.
It just means you're curious.
Yeah, and you just want to try new stuff out, and
yeah,
it's what your brain's interested in.
And it doesn't. If it's your fantasy, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should act on it either. Because a lot of the time, like, you could like be fantasizing about like kissing a girl, and then you get down to it, and when it actually happens, it feels kind of like, oh, that wasn't really what I expected.
Well, that was an
anticlimax.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference with a fantasy, because the fantasy is just what your brain has thought about exactly, so it's gone the most perfect way in your head. Like, for example, if we talk about rape, the way that you might fantasize about being raped would be completely different in reality. You imagine that they could be fit, or they've got a hot penis, they don't stink, all this other stuff.
It's just completely different to reality.
Just completely different. And I quite like pushing the boundaries of my fantasies. Like, a lot of I really, it's completely normal. I really am into tentacles and aliens, machines I really like the idea of, but because we're both interested in the whole non-consensual kind of doing things against our will, that's where that kind of grows. I mean, you were saying about role play as well. Role play can be really fun. I mean, there's
a lot of couples do engage in rape role play.
Yeah,
it's
lots
really
of
common,
couples. Yeah,
really common.
I mean, it's very much like a raw animalistic behaviour. It really goes down to our sort of animal kind of roots. But again, it's not okay if the other partner's not okay.
No, exactly.
With it.
It always has to be consenting. Like, we can't say that enough.
Yeah,
consent.
Do whatever you want. It can be as fucked up as you like. You could literally cut slices off of each other and eat them, as long as you both say it's okay. I mean, that's
quite
fucked,
extreme.
But but that's what
if you both want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're into. I mean, I know a lot of people are into the whole like knife play, cutting, blood stuff. Blood play is huge. And I mean, that we're going off the subject about fantasy, but fantasy, you could just imagine what you like.
Yeah, my only experience with acting out fantasies was like when I was really into like True Blood, and I was reading like all the books.
Yeah,
I had a boyfriend at the time, back like when I was like 18, and I got him to like bite my neck.
Yeah.
Just thought it was really hot.
That is really hot. But like, fantasies can be so good.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember before porn, like, I just absolutely
exactly
loved thinking about stuff, just because there are no limits. You can think about absolutely anything. It just depends on how powerful your imagination is, and if it's enough to get you off. My main sexual fantasy is all like the weird stuff, very non-consensual, but again, to the extreme of being like, a lot of things going on at once, like a lot of just weird fantasy stuff that isn't real, that you can't play out. I know, I'm like, please, boyfriend, wear tentacles or something, I don't know. But then that also does fall into porn as well. But it's just, sometimes you just can't get what you want on porn, and you just need your mind.
But yeah, basically what we were saying is fantasy is a fantasy.
Yes.
And you can think about anything you want.
Yeah. And it's completely cool, completely normal. And if somebody tells you a weird fantasy, it's it doesn't necessarily mean to say they want to play it out.
No.
That's just what's in their own head, and that's just what's turning them on at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you should always give everything a go, but if you feel uncomfortable with it,
I mean, I feel like
say
I've
no.
definitely thought really wrong things before. And
It's the guilt that comes with it, because people
Yeah.
think that if they think it, they're going to do it, and
Yeah.
that's just not the case. And
or
that's
that they want to do it.
Yeah,
Which it's not even that you want to do it if it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
really hard
But
to
it's
explain.
not, it isn't that plain and simple.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you keep your fantasy to your fantasy and reality to a reality.
Yeah.
Especially when it's touchy subjects like non-consensual stuff, then I think you're pretty much golden. And just make sure when you do it in reality, they're cool with it.
Yeah, consent.
Consent, we love consent. A lot of please rape me's and stuff.
Yeah.
So yes,
Please subscribe.
Please
to our
subscribe,
blog,
all
and
the
you can
stuff.
ask us lots of questions if you like on our website.
yes, and we'll try and do our very best to get back to you as soon as we can.
Yeah. Okay, bye.